evening, everyone. Good evening again. Really, thank you so much for continuously attending our renegotiating Black Studies speaker series this academic year, celebrating again African American and African Studies 10th year at MSU. It is my pleasure. I really am ecstatic to join not just me, but the Michigan chapter of the Association of the Study of African American Life to collaborate in bringing to campus and to the state of Michigan brother, Professor, and Dr. Khalil Mohammed. It is really my pleasure to say a few words by way of introduction about Dr. Khalil Mohammed, but really to once again extend my own personal gratitude in Dr. Mohammed in coming here to join us for Black History Month this week. So let me say a few things about Dr. Mohammed. You know something? Excuse me, I'm going to need my glasses. Oh, I can see. Okay, much better. Oh, there you go. So I just want to introduce Dr. Mohammed by way of perhaps underscoring his importance to the Black Africana Studies discipline that we are celebrating. And there are three things that I think you should know about Dr. Mohammed. First, he is living history. What do I mean? He's the great-grandson of Elijah Muhammad, who was the longtime leader of the Nation of Islam. So in that respect, Dr. Mohammed represents a living history of the kinds of themes that we in Black Studies are looking at. Elijah Muhammad was one of the formative influences who shaped the life and work of Malcolm X, who also became a minister of the Nation of Islam. But on top of that, Dr. Muhammad's own father is the noted Pulitzer Prize-winning New York Times photographer, Ozia Mokoka. There's a second reason why Dr. Mohammed is a very important scholar for us today. He is a foremost scholar and professor of our discipline, which is Black Africana Studies. Mohammed received his own PhD in American history from Rutgers University in 2004, specializing in 20th century US and African American history. He spent 2 years as an Andrew Mellon postdoctoral fellow at the Vera Institute of Justice, which is a nonprofit criminal justice reform agency in New York City, before joining the faculty of Indiana University. Now, in his undergrad, while majoring in economics at the University of Pennsylvania, Dr. Mohammed gained a perspective about the history of inequality through his courses in African American Studies. His own classic book, published by Harvard University Press, which is called The Condemnation of Blackness, subtitled Race, Crime, and the Making of Modern Urban America, demonstrated how the idea of Black criminality was crucial to the making of modern urban America, as were African Americans' own ideas about race and crime. Chronicling the emergence of a deeply embedded notion of Black people as a dangerous race of criminals by explicit contrast to working class whites and European immigrants, the book reveals the influence such ideas have had on urban development and social policies. That book won the 2011 John Hope Franklin Best Book Award in American Studies. Dr. Muhammad remains at the forefront of scholarship on the enduring link between race and crime that has shaped and limited opportunities for African Americans. He is now working on another book called Disappearing Acts: The End of White Criminality in the Age of Jim Crow. And this book traces the historical roots of the changing demographics of crime and punishment so evident today. Dr. Muhammad's scholarship has contemporary public policy implications. It has been featured in the New York Times, New Yorker, the Washington Post, the Guardian, UK, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, as well as he has been hosted on Bill Moyers and Company, C-SPAN, National Public Radio, and Pacifica Radio. He has also been an associate editor of the Journal of African American History. And Dr. Muhammad currently serves on the National Research Council's Committee on the Causes and the Consequences of High Rates of Incarceration, the board of the Barnes Foundation, and the editorial board of Transition magazine, published by the W.E.B. Du Bois Institute at Harvard University. And so there's a third Black Studies linkage here for us and our keynote speaker, and that concerns his current status as the director of the Schoenberg Center for Research in Black Culture in Harlem, New York City, a position that he has held since 2010. The Schoenberg is one of the world's leading research facilities devoted to the preservation of materials on the global African and African diaspora experiences. A focal point of Harlem's cultural life, the center also functions as the National Research Library in the field, in the discipline, providing free access to its wide-ranging, non-circulating collections. The Schoenberg also, like our own program, sponsors programs and events that illuminate and illustrate the richness of Black history and culture. So tonight, Dr. Muhammad will speak on a topic entitled, Who Needs Civil Rights History When You Have a Black President? In the talk's synopsis, Muhammad states that evidence abounds that Americans know less about the past today than in previous generations that we do know. However, where Black history is concerned, Dr. Muhammad states, the situation is even bleaker. His talk tonight will pose the following questions for us. What is the state of historical literacy among Black and brown youth? And why should we care? So why don't we just sit back and listen and learn from how Dr. Muhammad wishes us to tackle these important issues in our midst of Black History Month this morning. Please join me in giving a warm and loud welcome to MSU and the state of Michigan, Dr. Muhammad, Khalil Muhammad. Thank you.
Give us a moment for technical transfer here. I think we need it. Well, I want to just start off by thanking Dr. Dozie for that very generous introduction. Very warm. Thank you very much. We spent a little bit of time on the way over here playing the name game and realizing that there are about 2 degrees of separation between her journey here and from arriving to pursue graduate studies, her first job, so on and so forth. And that was neat. So realize the world is much smaller than it appears. I want to thank the others of the members of the African American and African Studies Department that are responsible for me being here today. I certainly appreciate your commitment to this work, to bringing people to this campus, and I know that you could pick from all sorts of people. And so I appreciate you inviting me to be here. This is my first time at Michigan State University. I am a Midwesterner, grew up in Chicago, and the legend has it that the first person to get a college degree in my family got it from Michigan State University. It also is not that far back, which says a little bit about education in this country. So I look forward to telling my great aunt, Loretta, that I saw her campus for the first time. I also have extended family in the Detroit and East Lansing region by virtue of my biography in the Nation of Islam and its roots in this community. So I don't know if there are any here. I have a big family, and if you know the history of the nation, you know why. But shout out to family that might be in the room, positive or otherwise. And I also want to say to Pero, who I met a long time ago. We were really just kids, maybe freshman, sophomore in college, Dr. Dagbodi. We have a very close mutual friend. So this is, it does feel more like home than it actually is. So thank you all. And for the students, I assume some of you'd be in class this time, no matter what. Others of you have made a special trip here, but to all of you, thank you for being here. My remarks are intended to draw attention to what I see as the crisis of historical literacy at the intersection of K-12 education and higher ed. And I've given you some of the framework in terms of the guiding questions summarized in the opening. But maybe just to spend a minute or so putting that in a more concrete context. And that is this. Since I have taken the helm of the Schomburg Center, I recognize from the helm of an institution that has really been at the center of institutionalizing Black studies in terms of the research that now is so widely accepted in the academy, which was, as many of you know in this room, was an uphill battle, was a political battle, particularly outside of the context of historically Black colleges and universities that had been doing Black studies before we called it Black studies. But to the extent that the explicit focus on the experience of people of Africana descent, both past and present, became institutionalized at some point in the late 1960s into the early 1970s, the Schomburg Center has been part of that process from the very beginning. A crucial research as a research collection to the production of knowledge. But there's something interesting about that history, and it frames the nature of my comments and the focus of this discussion tonight, which is to say that the Schomburg Center for those past 40 years has really been about scholarly production. It's been about making growing a collection so that people could tell these stories, people could study a global Black experience. Our collection is mostly US based, but it does reach across the globe in as many directions as it possibly can. And some of those are a consequence of US foreign adventures, diplomatic adventures that produce records which tell something about the relationships between Black people in this country and Black people elsewhere. But nevertheless, it was about helping scholars produce knowledge in a broader academy that had long neglected this area of research. And it's done that very well. And I am very proud to carry forward that legacy. But at the same time, and precisely over those 40 years, we were looking at a landscape of historical literacy in this country that I would argue, if we were to graphically show it, moved from a high water mark demonstrated by the actual young people's activism, the student activism of the early 1960s that gave birth